Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, last week I thought I'd heard it all when one of the Democrats threatened to end the filibuster, wanted to pack the Supreme Court, and said that they would confiscate guns. In order to do that, they would basically emasculate the Senate as an institution and also emasculate the Supreme Court as well. I thought that was interesting. It was pretty bad. But then we have here someone actually accusing a witness and actually taking out of context a witness who testified previously and accusing her of perjury. Following that, though, but I got to tell you, the most egregious thing that the Democrats did today is they took a person, a young person, little Mia, who was traumatized 2 weeks ago, still suffering under obvious PTSD as she testified in that video, and bringing that poor little girl to relive this. And if we're going to hear about how traumatic, and I don't say they're not traumatic, these raising money for Stop the Bleed kits is, then it's particularly pernicious and outrageous to take an 11-year-old child who graphically described how she spread a classmate's blood upon her and feigned her own death to make her relive that. If we're talking about PTSD, you just prolonged the agony of that little child. For what? For your own political gain, your own political purpose. That is despicable. And over the course of more than 9 hours last week, my colleagues on the Judiciary Committee, my Democrat colleagues, made it clear that they don't believe any American should have access to the means to protect themselves and their families. Democrats opposed a Republican amendment that would allow victims of domestic violence to purchase firearms. They opposed a Republican amendment that would allow the spouses of active duty and deployed military to purchase firearms. And again, they promoted ending the filibuster, impacting the Supreme Court, and confiscating guns from law-abiding citizens. And they gave their entire game away by making clear that neither Congress nor the Supreme Court will stand in the way of their radical mission. Their proposed solutions to the problem of violent crime in this country is to make felons out of law-abiding citizens under the age of 21, to make felons of law-abiding citizens who own firearms in homes with children, and to make felons of law-abiding citizens who own or purchase magazines that hold more than 10 rounds of ammunition. The most common firearm in this country sells 15-round magazines. Their proposed solutions are to force law enforcement officers to ignore due process and to strip law-abiding citizens of the means to protect themselves and their families from threats. And make no mistakes, my Democrat colleagues intend on total infringement on America's Second Amendment rights. Ms. Swearer, before you answer the most pertinent question I think that we're going to hear from you in just a second, I want you to tell me, can you define defensive use?
Defensive use, and I'm assuming you mean lawful defensive use.
Yes.
Would be a use of a firearm that is to defend oneself lawfully against criminal actions by another.
How often is lawful defensive use of firearms in this country?
According to a 2013 report by the CDC, almost all, with very few exceptions, but the most rigorous studies, and almost all of them show that it's somewhere between 500,000 and 3 million times a year. I think it's probably around an average of 1 million myself.
Do you believe that firearm use for self-defense, defense of others, or for the protection of property saves lives?
Yes, it objectively saves lives.
Now, you were accused by someone who took out of context something you testified of in 2019 of effectively committing a crime and committing perjury before Congress. Would you please like to respond to that?
Congressman, respectfully, and I appreciate the opportunity, but we've wasted enough time on political games today, and I'd like to get back to the merits of actually talking about solutions.
Very good. Now, I'm going to go forward now, and Madam Chair, I'm going to submit, please, the following items for the record. The testimony of Stephen Williford before the Senate Judiciary Committee on May 25, 2021. Mr. Williford is a good guy with a gun who heroically confronted and stopped a mass shooter in Sutherland Springs, Texas. I also submit a 2019 study by John Lott of the Crime Research Prevention Center. His study examines data on the rate of shootings and accidents in schools that allow teachers to carry firearms, which found 0 cases of someone being wounded or killed from a shooting, let alone a public mass shooting at a school that allows teachers to carry firearms. And thirdly, an article by the Washington Examiner that the Buffalo shooter was an eco-socialist racist who hated Fox News and Ben Shapiro. With that, I yield back.